Hello everybody. This is problem 3 from the worksheet for chapter 5. The problem is of two parts. Part 1 says calculate the duration gap. The duration gap, as we know, it will be equal to, or actually it's equal to the duration of asset minus W times the duration of liabilities. Now all three components are missing: the duration for assets, the W, and the duration of liabilities. As we know, the duration of assets is sum of asset times respective duration over total asset. Same for the duration of liability, it's sum of the liability times respective duration over total liabilities. And the W is total liability over total asset. Now let's start with calculating the duration of assets. Okay, so it's equal to sum of asset. Now the first asset is cash, which is $1,000, times the duration for asset, which is 0. Okay, plus the U.S. government securities, which has a duration of 5 years, so times 5, plus the loans, they have a duration of 4 years, so times 4, divided by total assets. So the duration for asset is 3.85 years. Okay. Now the W equal to total liability over total assets. Just total liability, not total liability and equity. Total liabilities are deposits and CDs. Equity is not part of liabilities. So it will be total liability, which is $3,000 in deposit and $9,000 in certificate of deposit over total assets, which is $13,000. Now the W is 0.92. Okay. And finally, the duration for liabilities is, using the same rule for the duration of assets, again, it's $3,000 in deposit times half a year, plus $9,000 in CDs times 4 years, over total liability, which is $12,000, i.e. deposit plus certificate of deposit. And the duration for liabilities will be 3.125 years, so 3.13 years. And finally, the duration gap will be equal so it's the duration of assets minus W times the duration of liabilities, and it's almost a year. Okay, so 0.96 years, which means a positive duration gap. Okay. Okay, now let's move to part 2. It says calculate the percentage and dollar change in the value of equity if all interest rates increase by 200 basis points. How could the bank protect itself from this anticipated interest rate change? First, let's clarify that 200 basis point is equivalent to 2%. Okay. Now we were told that the interest rate increased by 2%. What will be the percentage and dollar change in the value of equity? Let's start with the percentage change. Okay, percentage change in equity. percentage change in equity is equal to okay, so it's equal to minus duration gap times change in I divided by one plus I. Okay, this I in the denominator is the original I, the initial one. Okay. Okay, and the dollar change in equity is equal to, okay, now the dollar change in equity is equal to the percentage change in equity times total asset. So it's total asset times the percentage change in equity. But since we don't have an initial interest rate for the entire asset and liabilities portfolio, we will calculate the percentage and dollar change for each and every asset and liability. Okay. Now let's start with the with assets. Okay, so I will label this as 1. Okay. The first asset will be the securities. Okay, so it has a duration of 5 years with 4% interest rate. Okay, so let's start. The percentage change and the dollar change for securities. Change. Okay, it's equal to minus duration for the security, which is 5 years, so minus 5 times change in interest. As we know, interest increased by 2%, which is 200 basis points for the entire portfolio, so times 2%, divided by 1 plus the initial percentage for the securities, for the securities, which was 4%, so 1 plus 4%. Okay, and it will be equal to, this is in percent. Okay, so the percentage change in security will be negative 9.62%. Now the dollar change as I said is equal to the percentage change times the asset itself. This is the percentage change time. Securities are at $2,000, so it will be equal minus $192,308. That was for the securities. Okay, now let's move to second asset, which is loans. Okay, again, okay, as for the percentage change, it's equal to minus duration for loan. The duration for loan is 5 years. It's 4 years, excuse me. So minus 4 times 2%. which is the change in interest, divided by 1 plus the initial interest for loan, which is 8%. Okay, so the percentage change in loans will be negative 7.41%. Okay. As for the dollar change, it will be equal the percentage change times total assets times the asset itself, excuse me. Total loans were $10,000. So the percentage change will be negative $740.74. As for the liabilities, the same thing will apply. Okay. Okay. The first liabilities were deposits, and we had also CDs. Okay. Again, the same thing applies here. The percentage change and the dollar change. Okay. Okay, so let's go. The percentage change for deposits. Again, deposits were $3,000. The interest rate was 4%, so equal 4%. And the duration was 0.5 years, so minus 0.5 times 4%, excuse me, times 2%, the change, the increase, divided by 1 plus the initial 4% for the liabilities, for the deposits I mean, which is 0.96%. Okay. Now the dollar change will be equal to minus, excuse me, the percentage change times the liability itself. So it's 0.96% times the deposits were $3,000, so negative $28.84. As for the CDs, the same thing. The CD's duration was 4 years, so minus 4 times 2%, the 200 basis point, divided by 1 plus the original interest rate for the CDs, which was 6%. And the CDs will have a decline in value by 7.55%. And finally, the dollar change for the CDs equal to the percentage change time the value of the CDs, which was $9,000. Okay, so the CDs will witness a decrease in value by $679. Okay. Okay. Now, finally, to calculate the change in equity, excuse me, let's start with the dollar change in equity. The dollar change in equity is equal to change in assets minus change in liabilities. Okay. Done. Okay, but let me place it here, please. Okay. So the dollar change in equity is the change in assets minus the change in liability. It's equal to The changes in asset were as follows: negative 192 plus negative 740. These were the changes in asset, minus the change in liability, negative 28.85 and negative 679. So the total change in equity in dollar, we mean, is negative $225. Now the percentage change in equity will be equal to the dollar change divided by the total assets. Okay, so it's equal to the dollar change in equity divided by total assets, which were $13,000, and that will be a decrease in equity of 1.73%, which was perfectly correct, since the value, since the duration gap was positive. Any increase in interest rate will cause a decline in the value of equity. Why is it so? Because, as you know, liabilities will be repriced faster than asset. Now the question continues. They say, how could the bank protect itself from this anticipated interest rate change? Okay, since this interest rate change is anticipated, is expected, the bank has a duration of asset that exceed the duration of liabilities, which means that the liabilities will be repriced faster. So any interest rate increase will hit the liability before it hits assets. That being said, since interest rate will increase, the bank should shorten the duration of its asset and or lengthen the duration of liabilities. This way, the liabilities will be repriced slower and assets will be repriced faster. Any increase in interest rate will affect asset before it affects liabilities, and therefore the total value of equity will increase too. Thank you for listening.